All right, for so many of you, college application season is officially here. And right at the center of it all is the common application. But let's be real, calling it a form doesn't quite cut it. It's more like a gauntlet. So today, we're going to map out the biggest, most common pain points to help you navigate this thing like a pro. This one thought is probably the number one fear students have when they open up the Common App for the first time. It's this crushing pressure that turns what should be a process of self-discovery into this high-wire act, where you feel like every single click, every single word could make or break your entire future. And if that hits home for you, listen, you are so not alone. That feeling of dread, that little bit of anxiety that starts bubbling up when you see all those sections, that is a completely normal part of this journey. Just recognizing that is the first, most important step. So let's start right there with that first huge challenge, the mental hurdle. I mean, before you even type a single word, you have to face the sheer size of this thing. And that initial sense of overwhelm, it's a very real barrier we need to talk about. Yes, feeling overwhelmed is basically the default setting here. It is not a sign that you're unprepared or not good enough. Honestly, it's a sign that you get how important this is. You're looking at a massive project with a ton of moving parts, so of course it feels like a lot. And that anxiety isn't just some vague feeling, right? It comes from specific things. You see the crazy number of sections. You feel boxed in by all those tiny character limits. You get paralyzed by this fear that everything matters. And that leads to this intense pressure to not make a single tiny mistake. And that pressure can either make you freeze up or do something just as dangerous, rush through it all just to be done with it. Okay, so once you push past that initial shock, you hit the next big challenge, crafting your story. This isn't just about entering data. It's about telling a college who you actually are in a way that's compelling and authentic. And the absolute centerpiece of that story? It's the personal essay, of course. This is your one big shot to speak directly to an admissions committee in your own voice. But it's also the place where students make some of the most common and honestly, most damaging mistakes. Okay, and this shows you the biggest essay trap of all. An event-heavy essay just describes what happened. It's like a news report. I went on a service trip and we built a school. But an insight-driven essay, that explores what it meant to you. Building that school taught me that progress isn't about big, grand gestures, but about the slow, steady work of laying one brick at a time. See the difference? Colleges don't need a reporter. They want a reflector. They want to see how you think. And beyond that big trap, you gotta watch out for these other pitfalls. Things like cliched topics. The classic sports injury comeback story are just so hard to make feel fresh. And even if you have a great topic, weak reflection can kill it. But maybe the biggest mistake, letting an adult, a parent, a counselor, anyone over-edit your essay until it sounds like they wrote it. The goal here is authenticity. It has to sound like a smart, thoughtful 17-year-old. And hey, this same idea applies to your activities list. Member of the science club is just flat. It's a passive statement that tells them almost nothing. But co-led a project that won second place? Whoa! Now that shows initiative, teamwork, achievement. You always want to focus on your impact and your actions, not just your membership. Okay, so we've tackled the mental game and the narrative challenges. Now let's pivot to the nitty-gritty stuff, the sections that are all about data, details, and facts. This is the minefield where small, seemingly innocent mistakes can cause some pretty big headaches down the road. GPA reporting. This is a classic. It trips up so many people. Look, the difference between weighted and unweighted is simple. One gives you extra points for hard classes like APs, the other doesn't. But the rule for you is even simpler. Report exactly what your school uses. Whatever's on your official transcript, that's what you put down. Don't try to calculate it yourself. That can just raise unnecessary red flags. And it doesn't stop there. There are other little minefields too. For example, knowing if you're a first-generation student can be a bit tricky, so make sure you double-check that definition. And don't overlook the simple stuff, like making sure the course titles you enter match your transcript exactly. Consistency across the board shows them you're careful and you pay attention to detail. Now, the additional information section. Think of this as a strategic tool, not a junk drawer to throw random stuff into. It is not the place for another essay or to just repeat things you said elsewhere. It is the place to provide crucial context. Did your grades dip for a semester because of a family illness? Do you work 20 hours a week to help your family? That is critical information colleges need to understand your story. Getting great recommendations isn't about luck. It's about managing the process. You want to choose teachers who've really seen you learn and grow. Ask them early. Give them at least a month's notice. And here's a pro tip. Make their job easy. Give them a brag sheet with your resume and maybe your essay draft. And that FERPA waiver? Waiving your right to see the letter sends a really powerful signal to colleges that you have total confidence in what your recommender is going to say about you. All right, we are in the home stretch. You've navigated the mental hurdles, you've crafted your story, you've sweated all the little details. Now we've arrived at the final, and maybe the most preventable source of stress, that last-minute scramble to hit submit. These right here are the horror stories you hear every single year. The website crashes at 11:58 p.m. You suddenly realize a college needed a whole separate essay you didn't see. You get that dreaded email that your teacher never actually submitted their letter, or worse, you hit submit and you immediately see a glaring typo in your main essay. All of these disasters are avoidable with one simple strategy. Do not wait until the last day. Please. So, what's the big takeaway from all this? Awareness. Awareness is your absolute best weapon. We've just gone through and mapped the entire minefield. The mental traps, the story pitfalls, those devilish details, and the deadline dangers. Just knowing where these things are is the most important step to making sure you don't fall into them. See, this is really about a shift in your mindset. You're no longer just a passive applicant filled with anxiety. You are now a strategist. You have the map. So take a look at everything we've covered today. Which pain point, which trap are you going to tackle first? Answering that question for yourself, that's how you start to take back control of this whole process.